What up? Welcome back. It is Bones. And in this one, let's go ahead and do a top 10 video on McFarlane's DC Multiverse. Now, just getting out of the whole spooky season, I did have an adventurous Halloween weekend and day. So that got me to thinking about a lot of the McFarlane DC Multiverse figures that kind of have a spooky, scary tone to them. Now, we know that McFarlane has always had this sort of sick, grotesque vibe to his figures. Of course, he did do the classic movie Maniac figures, which I own a lot of, which are basically your horror icons done by McFarlane. Now, up here, I do have my Mezco Friday the 13th Part 3 Jason. Now, this is my favorite Jason, portrayed in the film by the great Richard Brooker, RIP. Now, this is my favorite version of Jason Voorhees. Uh, you can pretty much guess why, but he is a beast. He is a tank in this film. But McFarlane does have a history of doing our horror figures. He did do those crazy Hellraiser pinhead figures that are still sought after by collectors. And you have to look no further than the Spawn line to actually see McFarlane has like a darker side to him where he likes to work on more creepy and sinister versions of characters. A lot of chains, a lot of skulls, a lot of spikes. So, of course, he did bring that with him when he started doing the DC Multiverse line. So, whenever you see a darker figure or a more grotesque, creepy character, you know that McFarlane is having a lot of fun doing these figures. And surprisingly, we have received a lot of horror slash creepy figures from McFarlane in the DC Multiverse line. And I thought it would be pretty cool to name my top 10 sort of creature, horror, monster, creepy figures that we have received from McFarlane. So, with no further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. I do have some honorable mentions to start off the list. Up first is definitely going to be my baby boy, King Shark. Now, of course, he was the collect to build figure from the Suicide Squad wave. Awesome figure, really nice execution of Nunanu in this version. I actually do have around 8 of these King Shark figures. The ones I have in box, I do have 3 behind me, and I also have one that I'm working on for a custom. So, needless to say, he is one of my favorite figures. Now, the reason he is an honorable mention is because, of course, I do have a soft spot for, for King Shark. Anybody who knows me knows that the great white shark is my spirit animal. But this is a pretty nice creature figure, half man, half Carcharodon Carcarius, and really nicely designed. The things I like about him are the nice little grain texture that he has to his skin. They did get the eyes perfect. Even from images from the movie, they really captured that sort of black, lifeless doll eyes that he has really well. Love this figure. He's one of my favorites. And although he is not necessarily evil, he is a killer shark. He will eat you. So that is what gets him on the list. Now, I love the way they executed the articulation of the mouth on this one. Perfectly executed. You can open it and close it, bare his teeth, or have it closed. But I really love this King Shark figure, and that is why he is the first to be in my honorable mentions. Now, coming in next on my honorable mentions is the Swamp Thing figure. Now, this is actually the horned GameStop version. We did receive the original release that is more accurate to the comics, but sometimes he is shown in this version, which I like the horn version because it gives a little bit more of a creepy vibe to him. Now, another reason this guy is on the honorable mentions is just like King Shark. He's not necessarily a villain, he's more like an anti hero. Now, he is horrifying to any bad guys that are in the swamps, in the bayou, and he ends up using the green to like rip them apart or dispose of them. So he can be pretty monstrous. And one thing I love about this figure is the attention to detail. All of the roots and the bark, the tendrils. On the back, you have some nice spinal work here. Loved always how they added the little details like the flowers and the big leaves, just to give them a little bit more life and a cleaner detail. Love that head sculpt, especially with this horned version. But like I said, this is another one of my honorable mentions. That is Swamp Thing, but specifically the horned version. Just has that eerie feel to him that I really enjoy. Now, this is my third honorable mention, and it is my last. And this guy actually, none of the Batman Who Laughs made the list, even though that is also a creepy character. But I just thought this Darkest Night really captures the evilness and eeriness that is the Batman Who Laughs. This is like his final form. Love the articulated jaw. Loved some of the like transparent plastic that they used on him. Love sort of the flowing symbiote style tendrils that they have on him. They actually also added some cool spinal work. And although a lot of people don't like his sort of hunched over articulation, I actually like it because it gives him more of that creepy, nightmarish vibe, like something you would see in your nightmares. But I think this is a really underrated figure, especially if you want something that's creepy and looks really cool coming out of the darkness. So that is my final honorable mention. That is the Darkest Night. So now we'll get into my list. Most of these I picked because, like I said, they have that horror slash creature, monster, creepy vibe that I really enjoy. If you know me, I love my skulls. I love my horror. I love a little bit of darkness. Although I do know the difference between make believe and what is real life. I just find it very interesting to see the other side, which is a darker, creepier side. Now, surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, coming in at number 10 is the Bane and Scarecrow combo from the Last Night on Earth wave. Now, I really like this. Sort of reminds me, sort of like Master Blaster from Mad Max, which of course you have the muscle down here, and then you have the brains of the operation on top. And although McFarlane chose to give this Bane sort of that ghoulish zombie skin tone, it has grown on me over time. I really enjoy that. And just this rotting corpse of a scarecrow hanging onto his back just gives you a little bit of almost disturbing vibes off of this. I really enjoy this. I know this isn't a lot of people's favorite, but these two together is just something pretty creepy straight out of the pages of the comic. And you don't get more creepy than a half bodied scarecrow controlling a zombified Bane. So for me, this is a pretty nice piece in the collection. And that is my number 10 for my list. You can see Scarecrow's creepy visage coming through that transparent red plastic. And then, of course, he has these like syringe claws. Just the whole ghoulish setup that you got right here from McFarlane. Now, coming in at number 9, we actually have Clayface. Now, this is one of the earlier mega figs from McFarlane. They have released a different version, but I still like this original release. Now, love the articulated jaw, really gives him some attitude. Love the face sculpt is really grotesque, and the main thing I like about this figure is the way he kind of has like these trapped souls in his body. Like you could see the faces here. There is some like hanging appendages all over him, and he could do with a wash, but even without a wash, he is a really nicely sculpted figure with a lot of cool, interesting details. The closer you look at him, the more cool things you find. And being sort of a kind of hybrid between Phantom of the Opera and the Blob is, is a rather interesting setup for a character. Like I said, really love having him in the collection. Could use a little bit of repainting and wash, but for what he is, he's a really creepy figure that is tailor made for your monstrous creature shelf. So that is number 9, Clayface. Now, coming in at number 8 is actually all of the DC versus Vampires figures, although I am choosing to only show the Green Lantern version. Now, I really have actually grown to enjoy this guy even more than the Batman, the Joker, and Superman. For some reason, this Green Lantern vampiric version really speaks to me. Now, you can add an other effect to his left hand, and it just makes him look really complete. But the face sculpt, the added cool effects, and even the way I gave him a sort of bloody wash really adds to the figure. But these are all great vampire figures. We do have more on the way to build our undead army. So he is coming in at number 8 on the list. This being my favorite out of the other DC versus Vampires figures. That is the Green Lantern vampire figure. Now, coming in at number 7 is actually one of the first army builders from McFarlane. Now, these are the Robin Crows. Now, what you get here is actually 3 different head sculpts. This was in the Merciless wave, and you would have to look for the different head sculpts in each package. Now, I eventually ended up getting a good amount of these. I still have my mint in box versions, but I do have some loose ones as well. I think about 10 of them, each one having its own horrific, grotesque head sculpt. I do have one that is sort of my custom head sculpt just to differentiate him from the rest of them. And of course, the main thing about these was that you could get as many as you wanted to build a crow army or a murder of crows. Now there is the hunter who has a ton of these, but then there is me, the lord of the underground, and I also have a good amount of these loose for my collection. Now these do go for a pretty penny on the aftermarket, but they are a really cool addition to your DC Multiverse collection. Especially sort of, they give off that zombie sort of vibe, but I think they're more like ghouls, is what I would really classify them as. But well, that is going to be number 7, the Robin Crows. Now, coming in at number 6, we actually have the Manbat. Now, this fits perfectly in your sort of half man, half monster horror, genre. Love this figure. Now, I did do my own little touch ups, which was added some paint, tightened up the ankles. That was a notorious problem that this figure had. I also added some red jewels to the eyes just to make them pop. And I did add the articulated jaw. Now, this character is a Halstrom in the comics, turned into a Manbat because, of course, he's a scientist. And as you could see, we already have Clayface, and now we have Manbat. So we do know that Batman's rogues gallery is filled with freaks and monsters. But of course, that is why we enjoy Batman's mythos. Now, this is another figure that a lot of people, really forget about, but I love the sculpt work on this one. The back, the way they have that matted hair, the way it's all, each little, strand is sculpted out. Now, I know it wasn't the perfect execution of a man bat, but for right now, it is really nice and a great figure to add to your monster collection. So coming in at number 6, that is Manbat. Now, halfway through the list, this is number 5. This is Killer Croc. As I said before, you got a lot of Batman rogues in here, and this one is no different. Now, there is a difference between him and my baby boy, Killer Shark, and that is that Killer Shark has a little bit of a softer side, but that is something non existent in Killer Croc. He is a monster. He will eat you if he finds you in the sewers. A very intimidating, horrific character, well executed by McFarlane. Another mega fig, beautiful detail. Now, one thing is this guy could really do with some wash, some different paint colors. Also, one thing missing, of course, is the articulated jaw, but that face sculpt is really a thing of beauty. I have added a chain for him. You can add some more, maybe to the gauntlets or to his ankles. But for what he is a really ghastly looking character. Would hate to run into him underground in the sewers. Not to mention the fact that he will devour you. But that is number 5, Killer Croc. Another Batman's rogue for the monster collection. Now, coming in at number 4, we do have the Dark Flash. Now, I really love this figure. I think he actually made my number one of like 2022 or 21 McFarlane DC Multiverse figures. Just love this guy from the zombie styled skin tone and face sculpt down to the way the costume is really detailed with all kinds of cool little touches that you don't really see on a first glance. Cuts a really nice silhouette for an action figure. Like I said, just love this figure. I do have 3 of these loose. I have one in my inbox collection. Now, surprisingly enough, we have seen images of alternate heads of these, but for right now, this is all we have received. But a cool thing is that the way you manipulate him and move him around, even though these have the same head sculpt, they do look different when you when you pose them in different poses. They don't actually look like the same character. Once again, really just love the attention to detail on the costume. Really cool undead zombie head sculpt. Now this is a Flash villain, and there is supposed to be, like a multitude of them. That's why we have seen the other alternate heads, but a great figure to have on your monster shelf. Now, these guys did actually beat out the Blackest Night figures, which is Batman, Superman, and Deathstorm. It was between them and and this zombie Dark Flash, but I just had to go with this really cool Dark Speedster. So that is number 4 for the creepy list, the Dark Flashes. So now we have made it to the top 3. Some, you might agree with me, some you won't. Tell me your creepiest figures that you enjoy. And of course, as always, this is just my list. So coming in at the number 3 spot, we do have Frankenstein. Now another mega fig, really nicely detailed, really nicely sculpted. You got that classic Frankenstein head sculpt. You got the sort of Sergeant Pepper top, trench coat, gloved hands. You do get this gun from the munitions pack. It is missing a little bit of detail, but interestingly enough, this figure doesn't really feel like he needs a lot of added paint. He's just good the way he is. On the back, you do have that awesome sword storage with a pretty cool blade. And I just really love this gun that is actually made for Frankenstein. But that is not my favorite part of this figure. Besides the stitching and the little added details, what I really love are these boots. These boots are awesome. They're kind of like stompers, and just the detail is really nice. So, all in all, this is a cool creature to add to your collection. Classic monster vibes from this one. Now, a lot of people will associate him with Justice League Dark, but he is actually more of a part of the Creature Commandos. Now, it would be really nice for McFarlane to give us a couple of his team members. That way, we could start building, another little team with, a sort of darker theme. But this is an awesome figure to add to your monster collection. Now, this time it was up between him and Solomon Grundy. And although Grundy has the same, made up of different corpses, I just feel like the Frankenstein just does it a little bit better. This is also a good figure and he's monstrous, but between him and Frankenstein, I really want this one in my collection. So that is number 3, Frankenstein from McFarlane for the DC Multiverse. Now the runner-up has to go to the one who walks behind the rose, Death himself, and this is Necron. You knew I had to have him in this top 10. He is the Lord of the Dead. He is the Blackest Night. I mean, look at that head sculpt. Now, I did add all of these chains. I may want to rework them. This is another one that doesn't really need that much repainting. You can add a little bit of silver details to like the boots and stuff like that, but he is pretty much good the way he comes out of package. Once again, McFarlane has that, spine detail on this guy. Now, he could have benefited from an articulated jaw. Now he is missing that. But besides that, he does have his scythe, which is actually made from a black lantern. Cool wood grain on the handle, a lot of cool detail. This is just a home run from McFarlane, especially if you like creepy, dead things the way I do. This is a must have for your monster collection from McFarlane. That is Necron, bringing it in at number 2 on the list. Now, this one will be pretty interesting. This is my number 1 monster, creature, uh, sinister figure, and that is going to be Sabak. Now you might be wondering, what you hardly ever hear people talking about this figure, but I will get into why this is my number 1. Now you don't see a lot of sort of devilish Satan looking figures in the toy aisle, but this is one that I have seen uh, menacing the aisles at Walmart. Awesome figure. Now, what I really love about him is he has the best articulation, basically from a 7-inch figure, just scaled up to this mega fig size. But he has the shoulder bushing and socket joint, double jointed elbows and knees, all the articulation you want from a good McFarlane 7-inch figure, but built into this bigger, sinister figure. Awesome. Now, the next thing I really enjoy is the added detail. Like, even on the face, you can see the scarring and the glyphs that run across his body. really cool detail. Man, you just get some stuff that you don't really get from a lot of McFarlane figures. The gold is really placed nicely. You got separation between the buckles and the belts. Going into the back, and this is my favorite part of this figure, and that is the skull spinal work that they did on him. It is just such a creepy added detail that they have. Love the horns. Now, I do want to kind of repaint this guy and add like some facial hair to give him a more, Mephisto look. But one thing I did do was white out the eyes, and right away gives him just a creepier vibe. Just an awesome figure. I know this is a really, underrated figure. People don't really talk about this one, but I really love having him in the collection. Can't wait to start working on him, doing some cool stuff. Now, I did add this sort of bladed weapon to him, and interestingly enough, it fits perfectly in his hand. Now, I think this is from She Spawn, but she'll never be holding on to this big weapon, so I actually have given it to Sabak, and it fits perfectly in his hands. Just an awesome, awesome figure. So that is Sabak taking the number one spot in my awesome creepy monster collection from McFarlane's DC Multiverse. Now, as I said before, this is just my list. These are a bunch of cool monster creepy figures that you can add to your collection. You guys let me know what you think, who you like. But as always, keep hunting out there, keep collecting, keep customizing, and I will see you on the next
They used to call me Crazy Joe, but now they can call me Fat Man.